It is an exciting moment to see somebody that I have seen in a sweat-soaked Army aviator flight suit under the most extreme conditions and dusty, slightly blood-stained desert camouflage uniforms, and to see him in robes today. See General Broom dressed like that is wonderful. What a wonderful transition. And I'll tell you what, for Hargrave, I'm not sure you know what you've got here in General Don and Donna Broom. Corporate America is screaming for the skills and talents of this guy right here. And the family team that they bring to Hargrave is absolutely priceless. And I mean that sincerely. He decided that the profit and loss he cares most about is the nation's future, and the investments he cares most about is the human capital. These gentlemen, the primary example this morning, so you're very fortunate to have the Brooms. General and Mrs. Broom, distinguished guests, staff, faculty, and outstanding graduates of the Class of 14 and postgraduate program. It's a distinct honor for me to have a moment with you. And naturally, I'll focus my comments on you, Class of 14 and postgrad. And I know full well I have to earn your attention. I mean, after all, I'm just another old guy. In fact, I'm reminded of it daily. The other day, I was sitting with a couple of my non-commissioned officers, my sergeants, some really seasoned, been there, done that kind of guys, and we were talking about Army life. And one of them said, "So, sir, how long you been in?" And I said, "It'll be 35 years in June." And he just shook his head and laughed and said, "Shoot, sir, I'm not even 35 years old." And I said, "Thank you, Sergeant, for that observation." But my point is, Class of 14, I know you are sitting there, and you're probably figuring out, okay, why should I listen? Could I grab the diploma and please depart, General? I'm going to offer you two reasons to listen just for a moment. Okay, just two reasons. One is, over the last decade, with General Broom, I've had the honor of leading your peers, your generation. You are, like it or not, you have been generalized and tucked into the millennial generation, Generation Y, those born between 1980 and 2000. And we've been with your generation. And my peers and I in the military have had ample opportunity to see your generation up close and personal, dealing with the best of mankind and looking straight into the eyes of the abject evil that exists in this world. And so I'd like to tell you what I've seen in your generation for context in your next steps after Hargrave. And the second reason is a little complicated, so I need you to hang with me on this one. As senior officers, General Broom and I get to see full range of ages of young people, young professionals, from the lieutenants who feel immortal and slightly wild in a puppy dog sort of sense, to the confident captains, to the self-assured majors and lieutenant colonels and colonels who are convinced they know everything. And some of them do, actually. We get to see all of them in action, and as they help us make things run, help us make informed decisions. And in my current duty, which is at the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle, whose core mission is to educate and develop serving national security professional men and women, uniformed and civilians, from all the U.S. Armed Forces and 77 different nations. I have senior officers from every nation represented in your Class of 14, by the way. We educate them all for service to the nation at the highest level, the strategic level. So I get to see 40-year-olds in an academic setting, which is entertaining. But seriously, thinking about the road you are advancing on, which in 4 years will result in you all being degreed young professionals in some capacity yourself and stepping into society to do something significant, I hope and expect, as a Hargrave product. This gave me context for standing in front of you, watching my military professionals from age 22 through 42 and the way they face the challenges in their life, their chosen profession, and what this rapidly changing world is throwing at them. Let me explain further. Look, you have my heartiest and most sincere congratulations on successfully completing your course of study here. Guys, you are better prepared for life than your peers who went somewhere else. You don't know that yet, but you will. You will. The grave has armed you with knowledge. But I'm just wondering, after stringing together at least 12 years of your lives as students, the word student defined who you are and what you do, study. After years of moving from one classroom to the next and sitting down and having someone stand in front of the room and present new knowledge to you, and at the same time hopefully motivate you to know more, after a decade plus of a challenging but familiar routine, what are you going to do now? Your first response might be, thinking of tomorrow morning, General, I'm going to sleep in. Your second response might be, go to college, General Obvious. I want to better my position. I want to make money. I want to earn a living. Why do you think I came here? But my question is not about college or career. It is specifically, what are you going to do about learning? How will you continue to acquire knowledge in a less disciplined setting? Your next level of education is decidedly more independent than Hargrave. You'll be making a lot more personal choices with a lot less supervision. It will be different. And I ask that you look at it as an opportunity to modify how you learn about the world. Look, bottom line, I'd like you to ask yourselves, how will I know what I know? I'm only asking because I'd like you to think about it for yourselves based on what I've seen from the men and women that I talked about. Thinking about my young professionals and my young war college students, I see them move about with what I'll call baggage. The pace of their lives in their 20s and 30s, being busy and distracted. And you'll get busy and distracted in college. It dulls the intellectual curiosity of some of them. And tsunami-sized waves of information breaking over you every day frustrates you, frustrates them. My Army officers scratch their heads. How can I be a master of detail with so many details? And these conditions have led to some to adopt bad habits. A bad habit of falling for unfounded conventional wisdom that comes in the form of an attractively sounding and easily digestible soundbite. Usually of something they agree with. They've gotten into the rut of getting their news and current events from only one source, usually a source that tells them what they like to hear. Some don't even pay attention to current events. Some of them even fall for unfounded assumptions because they simply don't ask questions like, what makes you say that? What's your source? Some of them even need practice making intelligent and effective face-to-face emotionless arguments because their duties have them hitting a keyboard more than talking to a human being. So this motivates me to pass a friendly warning this morning, gentlemen. It's too easy now with this outstanding accomplishment to assume the next level will be spoon-fed learning. Sit, listen, regurgitate, get the grade and move on. If you do that, you will wound your intellectual curiosity. Do not put the blinders on, earbuds in, head down, mobile device up. Only read what you want, only listen to what you want, form your opinions from shallow sources that only repeat what others say, and then post your opinion on social media of choice and call it a life. It is my firm opinion that you, the next wave of the rising millennials, have two choices in this globally interconnected world. Take a seat in the grandstand and watch and yell, or get on the field and play. And the grave got you ready to play. The grave has equipped you to take the next step, secure greater knowledge, and then do things that matter, men. I'm asking you today as you head off to another challenge of higher learning to think differently about how you know what you know. Gents, there's schooling, and then there's education, and then there's learning. So men, please, stay intellectually curious. Commit to keeping an open mind. A sound mind and a sound body. You know, I was giving a talk at a university recently to young college students about a very controversial topic. And they were talking over themselves, throwing their thoughts at me in short bursts. And then in a sudden moment of quiet, a young lady looked up at me and says, "Actually, I don't believe I know enough about that to comment on it yet. I'll have to do more research." I wanted to adopt her. We need you to challenge conventional wisdom and all assumptions. Make sure that in your future you seek out interest or cause, something other than the work you call a job, and throw yourself into that cause. I hope you participate in your communities. Gentlemen, I hope you vote. I'm asking you this because we, your nation, need you on the field as a responsible citizen who makes a contribution to our society and our world. Men, as a soldier whose duty it is to study the world right now at the War College, to study the world and prepare for the worst case, I'm here to tell you this morning it's looking pretty ugly out there. We have a term for it where I work, VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I'd like to add dangerous. Now, I fully understand there are large numbers of our fellow countrymen who could care less about what's happening in other countries. But the wonders of technology are making your world more and more interconnected with every passing year. Our economy, arguably our nation's greatest strength, is more and more connected, interdependent, actually, with other nations around the globe. The internet amplifies and extends the reach of voices of ethnic division and hate-born religious extremism. And even though that has always been around, that's always been around as long as there's been recorded society, we're seeing over and over again ignorance and hatred fueled by technology is becoming a persistent driver of instability. America used to be able to accept a level of instability around the world, but that acceptable level is getting lower and lower every year. So we need you, ladies and gentlemen. Gentlemen, next wave, and I know you're up to the task because I've seen your generation in action. And, gentlemen, you are an amazing generation. Lieutenant Brian Jackson was less than 2 years out of college. He rode to the sound of the guns on a dusty street, jumping out of his vehicle to help recover a disabled vehicle under fire. Machine gun fire knocked him down, inflicting a severe thigh wound and rendering him unconscious for a moment. Coming to, he looked around and saw a senior sergeant badly wounded and unable to move. Reflexively, Lieutenant Jackson got up and ran to the big sergeant, picked him up and carried him to safety, getting wounded a second time in the process. He then returned to the scene and evacuated a second soldier, all the while under withering fire. Weak from loss of blood, he was taken from the field, medevac by helicopter to the aid station where the wounded were lined up in a row for triage. Lieutenant Jackson looked up from the stretcher and said, "I'm okay, Doc, take care of the others first." And the doc and the medics obeyed him, not knowing how much blood he had already lost. Sometime later, when a medic looked over at him, a now white and ashen, fading Brian Jackson, they jumped to work on him. Thankfully, I was standing in the Pentagon when I watched a healed-up Brian Jackson receive the Distinguished Service Cross. Your generation. 2 privates first class, Rosas and Lambert. 2 young men, 20 years old and 22, who couldn't be more different backgrounds, different races, different beliefs, different likes and dislikes, who became tighter than brothers in combat when they were wounded when their lieutenant was killed. Not seriously wounded, but bad enough to get a trip home. They refused. Rosas wouldn't leave Lambert, Lambert wouldn't leave Rosas, and they both would not leave their platoon. And they died together in the same attack 4 months later. A young non-commissioned officer, maybe 22 years old, severely wounded, lying in a Walter Reed hospital bed. Can't speak, can only see out of one eye. A general approaches his bedside and gently touches a bandaged arm and says quietly, "Sergeant, it's an honor to meet you." And the sergeant had a pad and a pen under his good hand. And the young man scribbled 13 letters on the piece of paper with his one good hand. And it was an anagram of sorts, and it took a few seconds for the general to figure it out. But when he read it, it was clear. "No, sir, the honor is mine." Class 14, I'm not telling you these things to depress you, and I'm not telling you these things to try and get you to enlist. Nope, absolutely not. We are all volunteers. I'm telling you these things because I wanted to ensure that you know you have a group of near peers in your generation who are living worthy lives, lives worthy of all previous generations of veterans have sacrificed for our freedoms. And I want you to know that my peers and I, us old folks, see them and their sacrifice, and then we come to a place like Hargrave and we look at you, and we see a fine generation. we see hope for the future, a magnificent generation that's capable of fantastic things. But we need you to step up and step out in your own individual ways, armed with the education, self-discipline, and values you received here, and confront the world as it is, and commit to making your community, your state, your country, and our society better, all the while putting others above yourselves in the process. That is a worthy life. But gentlemen, no matter what you do, commit to living a life worthy of my soldier's sacrifice. Class of 2014 and postgraduates, I'm confident you will lead our nation well. Hargrave leadership, thanks again for the opportunity to be your speaker today. Students, families, and friends, thank you for your patience with me. It's been an honor to be with you all. Thank you.